In a quiet, picturesque town where families gather under the glow of streetlights and soccer games are the heart of the community, no one expected the storm that was about to hit. Barron Trump, the son of former President Donald Trump, was known for his reserved nature, avoiding the spotlight and keeping his head down, far removed from the chaos his family often found themselves embroiled in. But tonight, everything was different. As Barron stepped onto the field, his bright red MAGA hat perched atop his head, it would set in motion a chain of events that would rock the town and test the very values its people held dear. What should have been a simple soccer match for the local high school team would soon spiral into a full-blown controversy. The evening was supposed to be a celebration of the game, a moment for Barron and his teammates to enjoy their hard-earned success. But as the team gathered at the sidelines, all eyes were drawn to one thing: Barron's hat. It wasn't just any hat. It was a symbol of a past political movement that still divided a nation. For Coach Thompson, the respected liberal figure who'd led the team through thick and thin, it was more than just a fashion choice, it was a challenge. As Barron laced up his cleats and adjusted his uniform, Coach Thompson, known for his strong views and commitment to inclusivity, watched from across the field. His jaw tightened. In an instant, the playful camaraderie of the game faded, replaced by a simmering tension that no one expected. Barron, who had kept his distance from any public display of politics, was now caught in a whirlwind that had nothing to do with soccer. What happened next shocked the entire town. No one could have predicted the move Coach Thompson would make, and no one could have imagined how Barron Trump, the young man who had always stayed out of the headlines, would respond. This wasn't just a game, it was the beginning of a battle that would captivate the community and leave everyone questioning where the line should be drawn between personal expression and team unity. Stay tuned, because what Barron did next stunned not only the crowd, but the entire nation. The evening had begun like any other. A local high school soccer team, driven, determined, and looking forward to their championship match. The town had gathered, families perched on the bleachers, each face illuminated by the soft, amber glow of streetlights. Barron Trump, despite his famous last name, had always been a quiet figure in the background. He wasn't like the rest of the Trump clan, publicly outspoken and embroiled in controversy. Barron had kept to himself, avoided the spotlight, and focused on his passion for soccer. But tonight would be different. On this particular night, he made a choice that would forever alter the course of the evening. As Barron made his way to the field, lacing up his cleats and adjusting his jersey, something about his appearance caught the eye of everyone around him. He wasn't wearing his usual casual gear. Instead, he had on a bright red MAGA hat, a symbol of his father's controversial political campaign. And in that moment, the peaceful, celebratory atmosphere of the game was shattered. The one person most concerned about Barron's choice wasn't a random spectator, it was Coach Thompson, the head of the team. A liberal figure, known for his strong views and outspoken stance on political matters, Coach Thompson had made it clear over the years that he ran his team on principles of inclusivity and respect. But seeing Barron walk onto the field with the hat on his head was a challenge to everything Coach stood for. Barron had always been a good player, a great teammate, but now, his decision to wear the MAGA hat seemed like a political statement, a bold proclamation that might divide the team. And for Thompson, a man committed to fostering unity, it felt like a threat to the harmony of the group. The tension was palpable as Barron prepared to join his teammates on the field. A murmur spread through the stands. Some applauded the young Trump's bravery in wearing the hat, others shot wary glances his way, uncertain of how to react. The crowd was torn. But it wasn't just the onlookers who were torn. Barron's teammates were confused too. Would they side with Barron, or would they stand with their coach? As Barron stood on the sidelines, Coach Thompson approached him. His face was set in a grim, serious expression. The clock was ticking, the game about to begin, but Coach wasn't concerned about Barron's performance on the field. He was focused on the hat. Without hesitation, Thompson spoke up. "Take it off," he ordered, his voice firm, demanding, but not angry, just resolute. It wasn't an ultimatum, it was a command. If you want to play, you need to take it off. Barron, who had spent years avoiding any form of public confrontation, stood frozen for a moment. He wasn't expecting this. There were no words, no explanations, just a single, blunt demand. It was a defining moment for Barron, a young man torn between his respect for authority and his need to express his individuality. What would he do? In the midst of the quiet before the storm, Barron made a decision that would shock everyone. In a world where political divide often overshadows everything else, Barron's response was as unexpected as it was powerful. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't walk away in anger. Instead, Barron simply took a breath, looked Coach Thompson in the eye, and calmly replied, "I'm here to play soccer. I'm not here for politics." And with that, he made the most dramatic decision of the night. The crowd held its breath, the coaches exchanged uneasy glances, and Barron's teammates looked at each other uncertainly. But Barron was resolute. He wasn't going to let the situation escalate. He wasn't going to give in to the pressure. With a calm demeanor and a quiet strength that belied his years, Barron took the first step in diffusing the tension, without a single harsh word. Coach Thompson, momentarily taken aback, struggled for a response. But Barron's words had already shifted the mood. The pressure wasn't just on Barron now, it was on everyone. Coach Thompson's pride had been wounded. The community was divided, torn between their respect for Barron's calmness and their allegiance to their coach's values. And so, the showdown between Barron and Coach Thompson was inevitable. Barron stood firm. He wasn't looking for confrontation, but the spotlight was now squarely on him. The world was watching, waiting to see how this tense standoff would play out. Would Barron back down, or would he show the world what he was made of? What happened next was a moment of clarity that no one could have foreseen, a turning point that would forever change the way the town viewed Barron Trump, his father, and the power of standing up for what you believe in. What Barron did next would change everything. Forever. The minutes felt like hours. The weight of the confrontation was undeniable. The entire field was frozen, as if the world itself had come to a standstill. Barron, in his red MAGA hat, was now at the center of a battle for more than just team unity. He was standing against the very core of what Coach Thompson believed in: inclusion, respect, and the avoidance of any political controversy that could create rifts within the team. Barron had not raised his voice, nor had he walked away in frustration. He remained calm, dignified, and unshaken. The tension continued to mount, but then, just as it seemed the situation might spiral out of control, something unexpected happened. Coach Thompson, his face still set in frustration, stared at Barron for a long moment. The coach was not only wrestling with his own principles but also with a growing sense of doubt. Could he truly remove a player for something as small as a hat? Was his commitment to political neutrality more important than the spirit of the game itself? Then, a surprising shift occurred. Instead of escalating the argument, Coach Thompson lowered his voice. He knew Barron wasn't going to back down. For the first time, there was a shift in his perspective. Perhaps Barron wasn't trying to make a statement against the team. Maybe the young man was simply looking to maintain some semblance of normalcy in his life, a break from the relentless scrutiny that came with being the son of a political figure. Acknowledging Barron's maturity in this moment, the coach exhaled deeply. The crowd, which had been silent for what felt like an eternity, began to murmur once again. The murmurs grew into whispers, and slowly, the tension on the field began to dissipate. Barron, who had been standing tall, waiting patiently, felt the weight of the moment shift. His response had been simple, but it had opened a door that no one expected. His calmness had turned the tables. The crowd, once divided, was now united in their respect for the young Trump's ability to defuse an impossible situation. Coach Thompson, with a heavy sigh, spoke softly, but his words carried a heavy weight. "All right, Barron. You can stay. Just, please, let's keep this about soccer." It wasn't an apology, but it was a recognition that sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought with force, but with humility, maturity, and grace. Barron's decision to stand his ground had not only earned the respect of his teammates, but had also forced his coach to reflect on his own values and the importance of understanding beyond the surface. The game, which had seemed destined to be overshadowed by political tension, now took center stage. Barron, who had only wanted to play, stepped onto the field once more, and the crowd cheered, not just for his soccer skills, but for his ability to navigate an incredibly difficult situation with wisdom and maturity. As the game continued, it became clear that Barron Trump, in that brief but powerful exchange, had proven something far more significant than his athletic ability. He had proven that sometimes doing the right thing is not about winning or losing a battle, it's about how you conduct yourself in the face of adversity. As the final whistle blew, the game ended in victory for Barron's team. But in the end, it wasn't the score that mattered. It wasn't the goals or the cheers from the crowd. What mattered was the silent, unspoken victory Barron had claimed on that field. He had taught the town a lesson in resilience, humility, and the power of standing firm in the face of a storm. His calm and thoughtful response had silenced the critics, won the respect of his teammates, and left Coach Thompson reconsidering his own principles. The town would talk about that night for years to come. It wasn't the match, nor the controversy, that stayed with them. It was the moment when a young man, burdened with expectations that no one his age should ever have to carry, stepped into the spotlight and showed them all how to navigate the chaos of the world with grace and dignity. Barron Trump had given them all something more valuable than any victory on the field: the reminder that strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the quietest among us carry the greatest wisdom. It wasn't just a game. It was a defining moment, for Barron, for his team, for Coach Thompson, and for a community that would never forget the day a young man in a MAGA hat changed the way they thought about politics, unity, and the strength of character. The final whistle blew, and with it, the tensions of the evening began to fade into the night. Barron Trump, a young man who had once been seen through the lens of his father's political legacy, had now stood apart, not for the politics he carried, but for the strength he showed when the world expected him to buckle. In that moment, it was no longer about the MAGA hat, the controversies surrounding his family, or the expectations placed upon him. It was about the quiet dignity of choosing to stand firm, even when everyone else might have expected him to falter. As Barron's teammates gathered around him, their cheers for the victory were filled with something deeper than just appreciation for the game. There was respect. They had witnessed a young man, despite being caught in the crossfire of the world's division, show the courage to face adversity not with anger or defiance, but with calm wisdom that brought people together. That was the true victory. The coach, once resolute in his decision to challenge Barron, now found himself reflecting deeply. He had walked into that game with a vision of how things should go, an ideal where politics didn't have a place on the field. But what he learned that night was more profound than any lesson he could have prepared for. It wasn't about silencing opposing views, it was about respecting them. Barron had taught him that true leadership, true unity, wasn't about forcing conformity, it was about accepting and understanding the differences that made each person unique. That was the lesson that Barron had unknowingly imparted on everyone in that stadium. As the players gathered to celebrate, the crowd began to disperse, but the impact of what had transpired lingered. The night had started with a clash, but it ended with something far more significant. A community beginning to understand that strength doesn't always come from loud words, or from rallying behind the loudest voice. Sometimes, strength comes from choosing peace, from standing up for what you believe in, and from doing the right thing when the world feels like it's falling apart. Barron Trump had given them more than a game that night. He had offered them something much more valuable. He had given them a glimpse into what it means to truly rise above, to lead with grace, and to use wisdom in the face of overwhelming pressure. And for that, Barron Trump's quiet strength would be remembered long after the final whistle blew. This wasn't just a victory on the field. It was a victory for every person who had ever faced division, for every person who had ever been caught in a storm of judgment. It was a reminder that, in times of uncertainty, what we do in the face of adversity speaks volumes about our character. And Barron had shown everyone that, even when the world seems divided, the power of unity, respect, and understanding is more important than any political divide. In the end, the lesson was simple but profound. Sometimes, the quietest voices make the loudest impact. And Barron Trump, in that one moment, had proven that true strength comes not from force, but from the humility and wisdom to stand tall, even when the world expects you to fall.